She looks like an addict, keep your distance. The insult cut through the calm afternoon before the gunshot did. 7 children froze around their mother, their bright backpacks still bouncing from the walk home. In a single breath, a peaceful suburban sidewalk turned into a battlefield of fear, judgment, and trembling small hands reaching for safety. Dana Holmes didn't run. She didn't scream. She simply raised her hands and faced the woman who had already fired once. Somewhere behind her, a sprinkler clicked, and the nightmare began. The gunshot cracked the quiet suburb open like glass. Children screamed, a stroller tipped sideways, and a black mother froze with both hands raised as her 7 kids clung to her legs. Moments earlier, she had simply been walking them home from the park. Now she was staring down the barrel of a trembling officer who had already fired once into the sidewalk near her feet. The officer's voice came out sharp, accusing, frantic. You look like an addict dragging kids that aren't yours. Neighbors peeked through curtains, unsure whether to call for help or to hide. The mother's name was Dana Holmes, and in that instant, she wasn't a respected woman or a parent of 7. She was a target. A mistake in someone else's eyes. The officer took another step forward, hand gripping her weapon like Dana had already been found guilty of something unsaid. The children cried her name, believing this was the moment the world finally turned dangerous. A distant lawn sprinkler clicked and hissed, breaking the silence as everything spiraled toward the impossible. The officer, Sergeant Melinda Crane, ordered Dana to kneel. Dana stayed upright, refusing to collapse under fear, but her fingers trembled. Crane circled her like prey. 7 kids, clean clothes, bright backpacks, yet Crane's judgment was already carved into stone. You people always show up in groups, bringing trouble. Neighbors began gathering at the edge of their lawns, whispering, wondering, watching. One tiny detail made the moment unbearable. The youngest child, barely 3, kept reaching down to touch the fresh bullet mark in the concrete, confused by the heat and the danger. Dana gently pulled him close, a simple gesture that carried the weight of a lifetime. Crane demanded proof that the children were hers. Birth certificates. ID for each kid. Something to prove you didn't drag them off the street. Dana's voice cracked with disbelief. We were just walking home. But Crane only lifted her chin higher, as if authority required suspicion to survive. A teenager across the street recorded the scene on his phone. Cars slowed. The circle around Dana tightened until she felt stripped of dignity, as though the world had agreed she didn't belong in her own neighborhood. The officer leaned in close enough for Dana to smell the bitterness on her breath. You matched the addict look. Loose hair, tired eyes, too many kids. That was enough for me. The humiliation struck deeper than the gunshot. Dana's children watched her, their world's anchor, being reduced to a stereotype. She swallowed the ache, steadying her voice even as her oldest daughter pleaded, Mom, please make her stop. Dana looked at the officer and asked softly, what would you do if this happened to you? Crane interpreted Dana's question as defiance. She shoved Dana backward, barking orders, demanding she lie flat on the ground. The children cried louder as Dana hesitated, her knees buckling not from guilt but from the unbearable weight of being treated as invisible. A neighbor finally stepped forward, shouting that Crane had crossed the line, but the officer snapped back, stay out of this unless you want to be detained too. For a moment, Dana believed she might lose everything, her freedom, her dignity, maybe even her kid's safety. Crane's hand hovered near her weapon again. The sun glared off the metal, turning the moment into a cruel spotlight. The teenager's video streamed live now, comments exploding with disbelief and outrage. Crane demanded one last time for Dana to hit the ground. Dana closed her eyes, bracing for the worst. Then a voice split the tension. Officer Crane, step back immediately. A man jogged from a nearby yard. Dana recognized him, Mr. Harrison, the elderly neighbor whose life she had saved months earlier during a medical emergency. He pointed at Dana, breathless. She's not what you think. That woman saved my father's life. Crane hesitated, but the unraveling had already begun. Dana pulled a wallet from her bag with slow, steady hands. She opened it just enough for Crane to see the badge inside. Deputy Director, Child Protective Services, State of California. The officer's face drained of color as if the sun had vanished. Crane staggered backward as the crowd pressed in, no longer silent, no longer afraid. Dana's voice was calm, controlled, sharper than the officer's weapon. You fired at a mother walking her children home, and you did it because of what you thought she looked like. Crane attempted to justify herself, but the words collapsed before leaving her throat. Dana stepped forward, collecting her kids around her like a shield made of love instead of fear. You don't protect children by endangering them, she said. That badge doesn't give you the right to decide who belongs here. It gives you responsibility. Crane's supervisor arrived minutes later, pulling her aside, removing her weapon, and instructing her not to speak. The crowd watched as power shifted without shouting, without force, only truth. Dana looked down at the bullet mark in the concrete, the tiny symbol of a moment that could have ended her family. She lifted her youngest child into her arms, whispering that they were going home. But as she walked away, a single unanswered question lingered in the air: how many others had no one there to speak for them?